Alright, so now that you've hopefully gone back to FL, dragged in your own sounds, you have your own cool little loop house beat going. We're next to the go, adding some synths, pianos, instruments, what have you, to give it a little bit more of a musical feel to it. Because again, it's electronic dance music, not, I don't know, electronic dance or electronic percussion. So, with that banter out of the way, let's go in and I'll show you a couple ways you can go adding sounds in. So the first, easiest option to do is you go up to your left tab up here, left click, go to add. You have a whole list of plugins you can choose from. You'll see that there are some extra plugins that I have that you may not necessarily have. This is done. I'll show you maybe in later videos for you're interested about how you can add your own synthesizers, third-party plugins in. For now, I would say stick to FL's basic ones. There's some really solid ones in here that'll allow you to do your job no problem and really sound good. And I actually use a lot of my tracks, so we'll stick to these. As you see, we got a lot of different plugins we can choose from. And I'm sure you're saying, oh my god, which ones do you, there's just so many, which ones do you choose from? And I would say mainly go around, click around, see, get an audible sense of what each sounds like. Just mess around, serendipitously discover what each do. But for this track, if you're just saying, okay, just choose the ones you use a lot, I'd say for this track, we'll start out with just a basic piano, because a piano, any dance track, always sounds good. The one I like to use is FL keys, so we'll go down here, we go into the add button, left click FL keys, take a second to load, and now we have a new channel that pops up with our added instruments. Now we can either hit the piano keys up here to play sounds, or if you go on your keyboard, or if you have a MIDI keyboard attached to it, you can play the keys, and you can, without actually having to manually click the piano chords, to test your melody ideas. So, for instance, on the keyboard, I'll play Q, E, and T, or play them at the same time, and it makes a melody. And then initially, I also can mess around just pressing other keys to mess around with other melody ideas. So, that's how you can quickly preview. We'll go ahead and add maybe 1 or 2 more instruments, and then I'll go showing you guys how we can tell the computer, okay, we have our instruments, these are the notes you play for this given loop. So, again, just to make sure you have the process of adding an instrument down, let's go up to add, left click, go in, and we'll select another one. Citrus is another one I like to use. Now, let's say if you accidentally add your own instrument, or add an instrument you don't want, super easy to remove, or actually any element in general you have up here. And we'll go ahead and do this. I'll show you this for this snare because I don't think we'll need it. If you want to delete a channel, super easy. You right click it, go down to delete. I'll ask you if you want to do okay, it removes it. That's how you delete. So if you had, also works for instruments, if you want to remove Citrus, you do right click, click delete, removes it just as easily. We can do that again because I want to show you one more way you can add instruments. And if you don't want to keep going up to the add, or let's say you just want one less step involved, the other way you can add instruments, if you go to right click a channel that you want the instrument to go above of. So let's say, okay, I want a instrument rack right above FL keys. I'll right click, go to insert, and then I'll go to Citrus. Do not be sure you're not hitting replace, because if you hit replace, I mean, you can do that, but it's going to take your FL keys here and replace it with whatever instrument you're choosing. If you want to just add an instrument and keep FL keys in, go to insert. So we'll go in, add our Citrus, and it adds it right above it. So now we have 2 instruments to choose from. We have our piano, and now we have what's called our synthesizer, which I'm sure if it's anything like me, like, oh, there's so many knobs, what does that do? What does that do? And actually, and this one's even worse because this is definitely one of those plugins that I only learned within the last year or two, because it's like it's like next level, really complicated synthesis. So I'm going to show you a little trick you can use to make different sounds without actually having to go in and know what each knob does and how to, alpha and envelope and whatever what all these knobs do. And that's using the power of presets. And as a beginner, do not be afraid to use presets. And even as a more experienced producer, I find I'm using presets a lot and just tweaking them because I don't necessarily know what sound I want. And yeah, presets allow me to just scroll through them easy. So the way you get about it in Citrus, it's going to be the same for most FL native plugins. That means plugins that come in with FL Studio. If you get third-party plugins, they may have the preset browsing spot in a different spot. So again, you have to take this on a synth basis. But for Citrus, super easy to get to. Go here, go to presets, and here you go. Huge, way too big a list option of a bunch of sounds you can choose from. And yeah, it's never ending. So let's say, what sort of sound would you like to put in here? I think we'll need probably some sort of bass sound to go onto the piano. So we'll see these little gray buttons, options that tell us, okay, these are what each of these presets, this is what it sounds like. So bass is just kind of all the lower frequencies to help fill it out. So we'll go, okay, I'm just going to choose maybe synth 2, see how that sounds like. Not too bad, but if you don't want to go to the presets and have to click up here, click another one, you can use these two knobs off to the right to quickly scroll through them until you get something that sounds good that you like. Kind of like that sound, so we'll go ahead and stick with that bass sound. We have our piano sound. And I think we need a synth sound just to top it off as we're making kind of a housey dance track. So we'll go in, add one more. Again, like every other sound, go to left click, hit add. Go get another instance of Citrus. And we'll go in, go to the presets, and we'll go find where we can find our lead section. So we first have to know our alphabet for that. And then from there, you can change the world. Let's see. It doesn't look like they actually have it labeled by lead. I think they might have it labeled under synth. There we go. Go to short synth. So these are a bunch of kind of top-end lead sounds. Lead sounds that we use for the higher elements in your track. Actually, do they have... Looks like they have leads over here, hidden off in the corner. So let's give those a check. So we'll go over here, go to Angela, see what this sounds like. Ooh. Alright, so we'll go ahead and stick with that lead sound. So now we have our bass sound, we have our piano sound, and now we have our lead sound. And in terms of what each do, the bass sound, as you'll be learning in future tutorials, in order to make any track, you actually layer multiple instruments at the same time. So if you think, another analogy I like to use is if you think of a band, for instance, you don't just see one guy. I mean, sometimes, again, it seems kind of weird coming out of my mouth as this is an electronic instrument or electronic music course. You usually don't see one guy playing all the instruments. But actually, for most of these guys, they're just telling the computer to play different ones at the same time, even though it looks like just one guy is playing it. So the way you can think of for each of these, how each of these relates to one another, is that if you think of a traditional rock band, you have the guy playing drums, so you have this loop up here, this is what he'd be playing. You have the bass sound, which is what the bass player would be playing. You have some sort of mid section, rhythm section, that's what your rhythm guitar would play. And then you have your lead section, which is what your lead guitar would play, or maybe your vocalist would sing. So altogether, this is why you have these layers to work with, and why you don't just use one layer and then just let everything flow out of it. It's because each of these come together, and you can kind of think of it almost this as you're creating your own band for a given song. So let's say, okay, for the drum rack, I'm choosing all these instruments being played by this guy, by this pattern. For the bass player, okay, I'm choosing you. This is the sound I want to play for the bass. For the rhythm section, I'm choosing a piano, so I want there. Maybe sometimes rhythm sections could have maybe another layer. You can put something on top of there. And then for the lead, I want the lead guitarist, what in a usually rock band, or maybe the lead piano player. This is the sound I want you to play here. So that's another way you can kind of visualize what exactly you're doing here. So now that we have all of our instruments, in the next section, we're going to go about telling the computer how exactly we put what exactly, which notes to play at what time, how exactly we go about doing that.